All right, looks like we've got a few people joining us, which is great. Thank you for spending your Tuesday evening with us. We might as well kick off because we've got some good numbers happening here. So a big welcome. It's fantastic to see you all here tonight. Firstly and foremost, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land in which we meet today. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present. Thanks for coming along to tonight's Ask Me Anything series. This session is designed to highlight Antler's founder's journey and to answer all your questions, all your burning questions about it. My name's Sarah. I am the VP of Scouting, Marketing and Operations here at Antler. It is a mouthful, but essentially covering all things kind of founder acquisition. How do we find amazing founders? How do we attract amazing founders? And importantly, how do we provide them a great experience as they build their startup with us? Tonight, we'll have Rani, Community and Scouting Manager at Antler in Australia, sitting down with two of our very own migrant entrepreneurs, Sweta from Dark Patterns Labs and Saeed from Migrova. Thank you both for joining us. Both of them have successfully built and launched their companies with us. Also on the call, we are officially, not also on the call, but a call out for you all is that we are officially 4 weeks away from our next residency, which kicks off on August 5. So we hope that this AMA gives you all a picture of how we support our founders and you get all your burning questions answered. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat throughout the evening. And importantly, if you are ready to launch your own business, make sure you submit an application to us soon so that you don't kind of miss out on that August 5 start date. All right, I think I'll probably pass this to Rani to do an introduction to Antler and to moderate today's session. But before we kick off, I just want to cover some general housekeeping. I'm sure everyone's well aware of these, but it's always good to rehash. At any point in the conversation, feel free to contribute by addressing your questions in the comments section. And we'll also have some dedicated time at the end to go into these in more detail. So please, we welcome you to unmute yourself. Please to unmute yourself if you want to ask the question, but otherwise please keep yourself muted to avoid any background noise while our participants, our panelists, I should say, are speaking. And if possible, please keep your camera on so we can see all your beautiful faces and we know who we are speaking to this evening. I think I've covered everything, Rani. If I haven't, please feel free to jump in and remind the lovely people of anything that I have missed, but otherwise the floor is yours.
All good, Sarah. Thank you so much. You definitely covered everything there. So yeah, thank you again for joining us on this Tuesday evening. Everyone, I hope everyone is familiar about what we're doing at Antler and how we support founders, but we're really here tonight to answer your burning questions. Before we dive into panel discussions and Q&A with you, just to set the scene, I'm gonna give a bit of introduction about Antler, just so everyone is on the same page. So essentially, Antler, we are an early stage venture capital firm. We operate globally across 30 locations in 6 continents with more than 4 billion assets under management, and we've made over 1,200 investments to date globally. And in Australia alone, we've been around for over 4 years in Sydney and Melbourne, where we run our residency program. We're also launching Brisbane soon, so that's exciting. We've made over 100 investments to date with more than 100 million Australian dollar assets under management, and we're definitely here to stay and to continue backing great founders from all different backgrounds. So how do we do that? How do we invest in people? How do we work with founders? At Antler, we build our own proprietary deal flow through the residency that we run. In Australia, we run it across 2 intakes a year. The next one is actually upcoming 4 weeks from now. So August 5 will kick off with our upcoming residency. In the residency, we bring on board exceptional and diverse founders to build their companies with Antler. And these exceptional people are mainly come from these three main archetypes. We know that human rarely fit nicely into boxes, but this is how we think about building our cohort. So we bring on board the tech and product builders, so those with skill set to actually build the product, build the solution. We also bring on board the business and operators, so those with commercial sort of like skill set to actually build business model behind the product and solution. But we also have the third archetype, which is the domain experts. So those who spend years and years in a specific domain, and they are the right person, the right people to actually build in it because they know all the pain points and actually spend enough time in it to actually build their unfair advantage to build in the space. And this also can look like people with PhDs, with like patents and specific sort of specific solution, or those who are looking to sort of commercialize their research as well. And our founders have come from a lot of different backgrounds. These are just some of the companies or institutions our founders came from. Are just some of the more recognized logos. But again, they've all come from like very diverse backgrounds. We also attract fairly tenured and experienced founders, 11 years average work experience that we've seen across the multiple cohorts we've worked with before. 38% of companies that we back have at least one female co-founder. 57% of the founders that we've bring on board to the cohort are serial entrepreneurs. And we're really proud that we've attracted and we've had more than 65 nationalities represented in the Australia cohort alone. Yeah, because we really pride ourselves to be that space for people from like, again, all diverse background to build their company, to de-risk their entrepreneurship journey. And a lot of the times these look like migrant entrepreneurs who otherwise didn't really have connection and network in Australia, but they have the idea and they actually have the skill set and they leverage our network and expertise to actually build their business with us. And we'll speak with like two of them today, tonight actually. So yeah, we are very industry agnostic. So we are really founder first. So we're all about investing in the right people, building in the right space. We don't really shy away from any particular industry. As you see here, this is just a beautiful spread of our portfolio companies that we've invested in. We see B2B enterprise startups. We also see prop tech, we've backed health tech, ed tech, but also consumer tech. So really diverse portfolio. Yeah, these are just some of the select investments we've made to date. We've backed over 300 founders across 100 companies. As you can see here, again, to my point about us backing the right people, building the right space. You can see here some of the examples. So Path Zero is a climate tech company who was built by Carl, who is an exited founder, but also previously built in the space with the first ever Australia's energy comparison and switching service. We have Upcover, an insurtech company who that was built by Sky, who spent over 10 years in financial insurance services. So it's all about backing, again, the exceptional people, building in the right space where they have unfair advantage in. Just a little bit about the founder journey and how that looks like with Antler and how we run the residency. Essentially, our residency is an extended investment process with a VC. We run it in two distinct stages. The first stage being the formation and validation. So the objective there is really for you to ideate, validate your idea, and form a team. And when you're ready, then you'll pitch that idea with that newly built team to us. And then we bring you in for a due diligence. So due diligence is essentially a more hands-on sort of like approach. We'll assign you a coach. This coach will prepare you for a successful IC pitch, basically help tackle and like get your early traction and have that initial solid company building. And then we bring you in for investment committee where we make the investment decision. And once it's a yes, money in, it's basically building your company. We have a very hands-on portfolio support as well. But enough about us. Today is really for us to hear from those who've actually done it, who've actually lived it. We have Syed from Migrova and Sweta from Dark Pattern Labs. So to set the scene, both Sweta and Syed, maybe you can share a bit more about your professional background prior building with Antler. And again, thank you so much both for joining us tonight.
Sure. Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks for having me here. And it's a privilege to be part of this live event focused on migrants. And welcome everyone who have joined us from across the globe. My journey before Antler. So before launching my startup with Antler, I began my career in insurance, where I help businesses secure their assets. And selling insurance is hard. It's a product really built on promises, but it honed my tenacity and resilience as a salesperson. And I then transitioned into education and migration space, recruiting students and acting as a liaison between colleges, students, and migration agents. And the role taught me the importance of building strong connections and understanding the aspirations of migrants seeking better opportunities. And then I worked in a house and land space where I help people build their dream homes, which is turning blank canvases into vibrant living spaces. This experience really helped me better understand user needs and how to deliver on them. And my most recent role was a development manager at Stockland, where I managed the construction of a 250 townhomes community. And managing such a large scale project honed my skills in project management, teamwork, and delivering on promises. And alongside these roles, I co-founded Skillera, an education consultancy assisting international students with admissions and student visas in Australia. And through this venture, we saw the immense opportunity to leverage technology to address migrants' challenges, which led the birth of Migrova. And all these past experiences are helping me to lead Migrova.
Thank you so much, Syed. Sweta, over to you.
Hi, Rani. Thank you so much for having me. Like Syed said, such a pleasure to be here and to be able to help people who probably joined here with the same kind of questions that I had last year around the same time when I joined Antler. So just a little bit about myself. I'm a lawyer. So prior to joining Antler, I don't have an elaborate professional journey like Syed does, unfortunately. So I was just finishing up my master's in commercial law at the University of Melbourne. And I was also working as a researcher at the Center for Artificial Intelligence that's housed within the University of Melbourne. And over the course of my research, I was working on digital transformation of businesses and how rapidly that's happening lately, and what are some legal requirements that businesses tend to overlook. And as I was researching into that, I got attracted to the issue of dark patterns, which is basically tricky patterns or tricky design elements that businesses use to sort of manipulate consumer decisions. And as I was researching that over the course of my research work, the law also began to evolve. What was initially just a policy recommendation started to become hard law with legal repercussions for non-compliance. And I realized that there was a huge gap in the market between how lawyers were helping businesses. So it's just, I mean, there's no journey before my business. All of the journey in itself led to the start of my business. So, and then I made an application to Antler while I was also looking for other jobs, because I also just got admitted as a lawyer like 3 months before. And I was just about to join as a first-year lawyer in a boutique firm around the same time that I got accepted into Antler. So I was like, yeah, that's a fork in the road. Let's take a huge risk, a leap of faith, and I joined Antler. Yeah.
Love that, the risk taker in it. Yeah, my first job, why don't I just found my own startup? All right. Well, we'll unpack a bit more about that later, but maybe let's go a bit further back because tonight we're talking about migrant entrepreneurs. So what brought you to Australia? Can you tell us a bit more what brought you to migrate to Australia, and how did you find your way to, I mean, I guess you touch it, to actually founding a startup and eventually building your startup in Antler. Sweta, you wanna?
Sure. I honestly don't know what brought me to Australia, to be very honest. I finished my undergrad and I was working as a litigation attorney in India. And I was looking to do my master's and I applied to a bunch of places. And I basically just liked the course structure at the University of Melbourne. So I took the ticket to come to Australia. From there, while so over the course of my studies and my research, while I had this idea, I wasn't sure, or I never knew that I was going to take this leap into becoming a full-time entrepreneur. I thought I was probably just going to have a job and do this as a passion project. But then a friend of mine actually told me about Antler. And as I was going through, I actually really enjoyed giving the interviews. It was just like, just not like any interview. They were quick. They were testing your spontaneity and your and how quick you were, and what kind of answers do you give under pressure. I'd also spoken to a lot of alumni from the Oz 8 and 9 cohort. And the key requirement at Antler was that you have to do this full time. So it really sort of fell into place. It was not a conscious decision. I didn't think I had the courage to take that leap. It just happened for me, very honestly.
Lovely. And just like a lot of things in life, it just happened. You just landed in it for the long run. What about you, Syed?
Yeah, I'm actually originally from Pakistan, and like Shweta, my journey to Australia was quite unexpected. So initially, I had an opportunity in Dubai, but my dad encouraged me to pursue a master's degree in Australia, and then I came to Australia as a student in 2017. And on entrepreneurship, really from an early age, entrepreneurship has been my ambition. Even during my studies, I nurtured this passion by running a side hustle, importing barber scissors from Pakistan, which me and my friends sold on eBay and through door-to-door sales, and we used to pay our uni fees from that. And Antler, I was actually introduced by one of my mentor here in Adelaide.
Okay. So you were introduced by your mentor in Adelaide and you just decided to apply. All right. Well, thank you so much. Now we know how you find Antler. So tell us a bit more about your business. I guess you both touched a little bit of that. But tell us about Migrant and tell us about Dark Pattern Labs. Give us your elevator pitch and where you at.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my sorry.
Yeah, Syed, go on.
Yeah. So Migroa is an immigration marketplace, and we connect migrants with registered migration agents. We are driven by a mission to empower migrants and safeguard their immigration journeys. Our commitment lies in simplifying this path by connecting them exclusively with trusted registered migration agents. And on our progress, since securing pre-seed funding from Antler, we have received additional 100K funding from Department of State Development in South Australia. And to date, we have successfully facilitated 61 transactions serving migrants from 12 different nationalities with 12 registered agents on our platform.
Lovely. And you got your investments just last year, correct? Has it even
Yes,
been
in
a year?
September 2023, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been less than a year. And you're currently building and scaling up. Actually.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for sharing. Sweta, where are you at currently? And give us your elevator pitch.
Sure, my elevator pitch. Actually, it's quicker than that. You can think of Dark Patterns Lab as a Grammarly for UX and UI design. But what we're doing is we're going to the market through lawyers, because lawyers just working with them give us a lot of insights about how to better insulate us from any potential legal liability. And all of their feedback is going into product development so we can learn how to serve businesses better. So we're just sort of like a Grammarly for UX, but you can use us to sort of like minimize any penalties and legal repercussions and sort of increase conversions and customer loyalty for you. And so we got funded by Antler just in December last year, and it's been 6 months. I can't honestly believe it's 6 months. So we've just concluded our very first pilot with a big international law firm and a big travel business. And so at the moment, we feel like we've got sufficient validation. So we're deep into product building mode as we're gearing up towards, we're just getting ready for another bigger pilot with, a bigger pool of law firms and businesses as well. So that's where we're headed, but nothing amazing like what Syed's achieved so far. We're just focusing on product development at the moment and talking to more and more more and more of the market to see if there's anything that we've missed. And we've got, now that we have enough validation, we've also got the courage to ask all these killer questions that you initially would be super scared and super anxious to ask someone, to see what is that could potentially prevent someone from using our idea. So we're doing a lot of that research to see how we can get more and more people to try our product.
Exciting. And I think this also demonstrate a point where like validation doesn't stop after Antler, right? You're like you validated in Antler, get that investments, but even after investments, if you think about it, it's just only been 6 months in that money.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you continue validating, actually achieve the product market fit post Antler as well. So it doesn't stop there. We're just like your first backer. Exciting. So talking about validation, so maybe we can actually touch on tell us a bit more. So you both are building within, your domain expertise, but you actually researched this space before you came into Antler with this idea. And Syed, you also had a company actually dealing with international students, so you know your domain, which you're currently building in. So tell us a bit more about how you landed on this specific idea and maybe the validation process as well, in the Antler residency that you've gone through, and how much the idea has changed or stayed the same since you started, validating in Antler and building.
As a migrant myself, I personally encountered these challenges, migrant space. And then, as you said, my experience working in the education and migration sector, coupled with launching a traditional business in this field, provided deep insights into the immigration landscape and challenges faced by the migrants and agents alike. And then participating in Antler's program allowed us to refine these insights into concrete hypotheses and then test them rigorously. And then gathering evidence that clarified our path forward, how to best enter the market. And on the idea, I would say our idea hasn't changed much since then. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The idea stayed the same. It's just about like gaining that early traction and actually winning the market, the slice of the market. Gotcha. What about you, Sweta?
For us, validation is still an ongoing process. There's something new that we learn every day. And because our technology is so tied into the law, every day there's something new, or there's a new case law. And it's so interesting because the space is so rapidly evolving. So there's so much. Initially, we thought, okay, let's speak to the product teams and businesses. Now we're like, let's speak to the marketing team. Let's speak to the sales team. Let's speak to the supply teams. And it's a lot of information and a lot of research that's still ongoing. But for me, one of the earliest validation started from within the Antler cohort. And also some really tough questions that I had was also from speaking to people at the Antler cohort, which is so amazing because there were, so at least when I was part of Antler, there were lots of really experienced software engineers and product managers and product owners who were part of the cohort, who were like, okay, this, who helped me validate this, who helped me put in touch with the people in their network. And that's how, the Antler community is already working. For me, that's how it started. And then when you're in Antler, while you're trying to validate your idea, another thing that you're trying to do is find a potential co-founder for your company, which means you're actively trying to sell a vision to people in the cohort to see who is the right person that you can build that company with. And while you're in the process of discussing your vision with people, there'll be a lot of challenging questions that people are going to ask because they want to make sure that their their time in this company is also just as insured, and they're not walking in with their eyes closed. So they're going to ask you a lot of challenging, really tough, difficult questions that help me validate or analyze my problems from all sides that I had not thought of before. Because as a researcher, I had a strong bias that, oh my God, this is such a great idea. Oh my God, this is so commercially viable. All I need to do is find someone and start building. But then what Antler does is it really forces you to think about the commercial or the pragmatic aspects of this problem that you had not thought of. So for me, validation started right at the Antler program. And yeah, it's something that we're still working on, but we're very happy with where we are at right now.
Yeah, and I think you touch on a really interesting sort of like point there, which is like the cohort is really something for you to leverage on, right? The network, the expertise of the cohort, you have this like unmatched sort of like access to like intellectual capital in the room, like founders from like all different background and each with their own expertise and network that you can definitely leverage on, not necessarily to find a co-founder, like obviously co-founder is a gap that you need to fill, but also all that sort of like exchange of knowledge and exchange of feedback as well, that is definitely useful. That's sort of, I think, a good sort of segue to my next questions around co-founding relationships. You both have had your fair share of journey of actually come up with this current setup of your co-founder, like co-founding team. So how did you form your current setups, and what has been your experience in building your current foundational team?
Yeah. So I initially went to Antler's program with another co-founder. And in the 5th week, Antler really spotted this, that we both didn't have complementary skills. We were both had the same similar commercial acumen. And Antler said, hey, we really like what you're trying to do, but we would really like you to bridge this gap by bringing another co-founder who has a more technical expertise. And then in the 5th week, I was just there, how I'm going to found a co-founder. And then I flew back to Adelaide, and Chris Kirk, who is the CEO of Stone and Chalk. So I was having a coffee with him. I said, look, I'm just in the middle of this cohort, and Antler wants me to find a co-founder who is more technical. And then Imtiaz used to work with me in Skillera, but I didn't know his technical expertise. And Chris mentioned that he has recently exited a startup. He used to work for Kindship and currently working as a digital nomad in Thailand. And Imtiaz came back to Australia. I took him to Melbourne. So Antler really helped me selecting him, doing the interviews, trying to figure out whether he's a good founder fit for Migrova or not. And then Imtiaz, I think we really have complementary skills. I bring strategic thinking, management experience, and domain expertise, while Imtiaz excels in operations and technology and effectively executing on our vision alongside the team. And on the team, building a strong foundational team, I think Migrova has always been, at Migrova, it has always been very important for us. We prioritize diverse skills, obviously shared passion and strong collaboration, that ensuring we navigate challenges effectively and drive our mission forward.
Yeah, lovely. I remember as well those days were like, oh yeah, we are very transparent in our feedback, and I think it's also important to actually take that feedback in a way that actually works for you. If you want to continue building with Antler, there's always a chance, and in your case, I guess it's a way like, okay, let me fill in this gap and actually bring another co-founder that can potentially.
That was a great help because we couldn't spot it ourselves, and Antler did it. I think it was a great help. Imagine building with someone who didn't have a complementary skills, and how's your relation gonna look like down the track in 6 months. So I think, yeah, it was a great help. I still appreciate that from Antler.
Thank you, Syed, and we appreciate you building a company with us. Sweta, what was your story?
So about like 6 weeks, so Antler gives you a lot of opportunities to do a bunch of design sprints with different people in the cohort. And then they also do organize. So I was part of the Melbourne cohort. So they do organize trips to the Sydney cohort so they can be appropriate cross-pollination, enough opportunity for you to learn and speak to everybody else. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. I couldn't find anybody that I could properly connect with for my business. So I brought somebody else from outside of the program, and I introduced them to the investment directors at Antler, and then they interviewed him, and then he went through due diligence as well. But unfortunately, at about the third month after we received our investment, we had to call it quits because of a lot of personal reasons. And that's also the hardest part about building a startup, is that you're making a lot of sacrifices on with your friends and your family, and all of that sometimes will catch up. So that's one thing to speak about with your potential co-founder, if whoever is listening, is to talk about all of the personal stuff that you're scared to address as well. So at around the 4th month mark, I was again looking for another co-founder to work with, but this time. So the one thing that I didn't do while I was part of the Antler cohort is take the 50 founder questions seriously. That's number one. Number two is also, as somebody that's fresh out of university and as a researcher, you're not sure what are the questions that you should really take seriously. What should you vet thoroughly? Because when it says, so how many hours a week are you willing to work, or how much of a salary do you require, you're like, yeah, I'm willing to work like 100 hours a week. I don't need a salary. I'm happy to put my company in. You're sort of like, you will catch yourself answering, and you sometimes other people also might answering just so you could start working with somebody and get something out there quickly. And that's just very human, because you're so driven by the passion for the work, and everybody's just so driven by the vision of being able to have your own startup. But in retrospect, the one thing that I now know is to address all of the difficult questions head on. What salary do you actually do need? What happens if we don't raise within the stipulated, 6 months or 8 months time? What happens if we get a bunch of really difficult customer feedback? How do we practice compassion within the team? Because all of these conversations and how you speak with one another will set the tone for the early culture of the company as well. So as I was then in my second round, when I was speaking to a lot of people, I was able to answer those really difficult questions head on. But I have to say that I found my second co-founder also through Antler as well. Again, another plug. That's how the Antler community is really working. It was actually through a LinkedIn post. A friend of mine who is also an Antler founder posted saying, hey, a friend of mine is looking for co-founder. And then I had a bunch of leads, but I just very intuitively picked somebody from Antler because I know this person's already been vetted for all of the technical skills and their grit and resilience. So you don't have to question on that front. You just have to see if you can work together and how you address or handle pressure together. So yeah, so that's how my journey has been so far.
Yeah, it's definitely not. It wasn't a straightforward journey, but you still found your co-founder through Antler. So long story short, Sweta was in a cohort that was last year. It was like Aus 10.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you found your co-founder, your second co-founder.
11.
He was actually in Aus 11.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like a cohort after you. Anyway, you ended up like together, so that's good.
Yeah,
that's happy days at the end. Question. So actually, part of the Antler proposition is obviously a lot of it is about de-risking your entrepreneurship, and one of it to actually find your co-founder. You definitely hit a curveball right there, both of you, with your co-founder situation. So why did you still go through with Antler? What was the value for you back then?
Okay, for me, I think the value is just that the one thing that I did notice. So I have to say that Antler supports you. They really do support you from day zero when you're pre-product, pre-revenue, when you're just at the ideation phase with a little bit of validation. So they're investing in you as people. But around the same time, because they want to see you succeed and they're invested in your company, they get you to think about angles that, in my opinion, people that are bootstrapped up to a certain point don't really think about at the early stages of running a company. And apart from that, what I have just in my 6 months of journey is access to networks, access to people. And at least for me, it's been easier to reach out to my coach and say, hey, here are the places that I am facing, hitting a wall with, can you put me in touch with X? Can you put me in touch with Y? And I love how you're open to facilitating those connections. And that's not just with my coach. I think that's with the entire Antler team as well. It's just so amazing to be able to take advantage of your connections as well. Something that you would never be able to do where you're just sitting by yourself, especially as a migrant in a new country where you don't have friends, you still don't have a community, you're working to establish your network. And I was at the very start of my career. It's not like I'd worked at a law firm for 5 years and I'd made all these legal connections. Yeah. So I was still super new, trying to figure out who my friends and community were. So in that front, I think just being part of Antler, and again, like I said, some of the people in my cohort also put me in touch with their friends and their community. And that helped me validate, that helped me get a lot of opinion quicker than I would have had I just tried this all by myself. And also, just one thing to keep in mind is that Antler is also a well-recognized name. So sometimes when I would get in touch with lawyers as I was validating my problem, I would be sitting in the Antler office and they would be like, hey, I see Antler logo right behind you. You're working there. Congratulations. And then that would just, induce this amazing energy into our conversations, and it would just go in a different directions because they see you. It's not a school project anymore. They know you're actually trying to build a company. And then, you're taken a lot more seriously. At least for me, that was my personal experience.
So that like stem of credibility and like recognized name, especially as a first-time founder. Gotcha. Anything you want to add, Syed?
Yeah. I actually call Antler program the Harvard of entrepreneurship, offering rapid coaching and idea testing. So I think as Shweta said, as a migrant entrepreneur, connections are crucial, especially in a new country. And Antler provides a platform to connect with fellow entrepreneurs, co-founders, and expand your network generally. And the most valuable aspect for us was testing our ideas and receiving coaching from experienced mentors. And also, when we got into the program, we were really bad at pitching. And so Antler really helped us honing our pitching skills, which is also helping us signing up more customers, raising more funds. And even to date, we still go back to Antler for so many things. Like we have a monthly catch up, for example, be it invoicing, sales, hiring someone. For example, I was trying to hire someone and I wasn't sure. So I got one of the Antler GP to help me with the interview. And he sat in that interview panel and helped me decide. So you get a lot of support, even with our current fundraising. Antler is being very supportive. And we had some legal challenges, which every startup sometimes has. And Antler connected us with a lawyer where we initially got a quote of around $20,000 to solve that. And we got it done under $4,000 just because Antler that connection. So yeah, you get a lot of that intangible value being a part of Antler community, and it really helps you ease down your journey as an entrepreneur.
Wow, you guys are really doing my job selling Antler here.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
So yeah, and love that you said it's like Harvard for like entrepreneurship. So yeah, I mean, as much as Harvard, we have a very selective process as well. So hopefully we work with like all the exceptional talents out there. Okay, I want to actually pass over to the audience if we have any questions. I think we have some in the chat box already. Nina have already helped answer some of them, but I think we have one for Sweta. Okay, but again, everyone, if you want to actually unmute yourself, please just raise your hand if you want to just shoot your question away. But I'm gonna start with the questions we have in the chat box. All right. So for Sweta, for someone who is a first-time founder and doesn't have a lot of professional experience, and you've definitely touched on this briefly before, have you got any tips for making an applications for the Antler residency? Any tips on the interview process as well?
I would say be honest. That's my only tip, because they can tell when you're bullshitting. And I don't think Antler is specifically looking for people with professional experience. They're just looking for people that are good at the one thing. What is the one thing you think you're good at, and why do you think you're good at it? And if you're convinced that you are good at X, then you'll be able to convince everybody that you're good at X. So I would just say be honest. I'm sorry, I don't think that's really helpful, but yeah.
No, definitely. I think it's just like bringing your authentic self to the interview process. And we know what we want to see in founder. And once you bring your authentic self, then definitely if you're in, then you're in.
That was my question, Sweta. Thanks for answering, and that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Rahul. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rahul. Yep, and Ming, I hope your question around the co-founder matching actually was answered already. But maybe there's a second part of this question about trusting. So how did you get to trust people, your co-founder, enough to actually build a company together? Any sort of like tips?
That's the most difficult part, actually. It's really difficult. Sometimes you don't really know, because the person that I did bring onto the Antler cohort was someone I'd known for like about 2 years. And the person that I'm currently working with is just somebody that I'd not met before at all. And we've already signed the contract and we're sort of like officially working in this business together. But I would just say one of the first signs of whether this is going to work out is how you treat each other as people, and how you respect each other's opinion. That's primary, and everything else is built on top of that. Because if you're good people, you can always upskill yourselves. And because being good people means there's enough transparency, there's proper communication, there's accountability, and there's loyalty to the business that you're building. Otherwise, if you're just in it for all the wrong reasons, then that would show. So just when you're vetting somebody else with the 50 questions, I think they're also like the bit of the 50 questions about testing your soft skills. So always remember that soft skills extend beyond just grit and resilience. There is one particular question called, what is the last time you've had a conflict and how did you deal with it? That's the difficult question. I've skipped that. I've spoken to like 10 founders when I was doing the cohort Antler program, and we've all been like, oh yeah, whatever. So try and get a coffee together, go get a beer or a drink together, and really try and address conflicts that you've had.
Yeah.
It's important to know each other's people and what are your motivations for getting into this business. Then everything else would actually fall in place. That's literally my biggest takeaway. You need to be good people, good humans.
Love that. And I love that it's all about basically facing all the difficult conversation questions.
Head-on. Yeah.
Head-on. Yeah. Anything you want to add there, Syed?
Yeah, I think I agree to Shweta on that. And personally, what I do is startups are a marathon. And I ask myself a question, you're going to build with this guy for the next 5 or 10 years. And do you want to build with him or not? If answer is yes, then I get into the skill set and other things, because it's like a marriage. Guys gonna spend a lot of time together, and on the trust part, you can only learn by doing it. So you get a co-founder, start, and you have your answers within the 6 months, I think. So that's the only way, testing with someone.
Yep. And I think the other way to see it is also entrepreneurship is all about taking risks, and like actually bringing on board a co-founder. It's another risk that you take. It's like all about de-risking that, but it's not like a complete like non-risky thing.
Yeah.
All right. So we have Han Mok, who raised his hand. Do you have any questions?
Yeah. Thanks for a enlightened talk. Can I ask both of you, what is a typical day at the residency for the first half? I understand it's 11 weeks. What happened during the 6th week and what happened to the balance week? Can you just give me a typical day that you spend at a residency? What do you do? What time you start? Can you just anything, or you go for a party? Just anything.
Yeah. I think for the first 5 weeks are the most difficult, because that's where you have to validate your idea, validate yourself as a co-founders, and also test your messaging. And after the 5 weeks, it becomes much easier, because then Antler assigns you a coach who helps you from there to the IC. So the first 5 weeks are the hardest, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The first 2 weeks in particular, I think they're like fully, at least I'm not sure if you've changed the design of the program now, but in the
pretty much the same. Yes.
Yeah, it's like
the first weeks will always be crazy.
And I remember every day I would go home and be like so tired, because there's such interactive sessions and intensive learning sessions as well. But the first 6 weeks is when it would actually feel like you're you're part of the Squid Games is some really tough competition, because you see a lot of people partnering with other people, finding their co-founders and fast tracking and getting to investment committee. And you see a bunch of other people wanting to drop out of the program. And then you're sort of like stuck in between, saying which way do you want to go? So the first 6 weeks is super crucial to sort of, it's a test to yourself as to, am I built to do this? Or, and it'll sort of test your grit, your resilience, and your determination. But I would just say, please do not, look at the Antler funding like a competition. At least for me, I found my co-founder in just recently. So if you think, if you're committed to your idea, and if you're committed to validating it, regardless of which part of the journey you find your co-founder, Antler will always invite you back if they like you enough and if they believe in your business enough. So just don't think that the 12 weeks is the end of everything. It's only the beginning. After you get your first investment, it's really only the beginning, and the real hard work starts right after. So just be honest and compassionate with yourself, just as much as you probably would be with your best friend during that program.
Thanks very much.
Of that. And it's definitely, as we like to say, it's not a race, it's a marathon journey. It's all about like staying and have your own pace and actually finish the journey. And yeah, the first 2 weeks we try to actually set you up for a good foundation. So that's why we're going to have a lot of master classes, a lot of design sprints, a lot of like networking opportunities. As Sweta mentioned, it could be overwhelming for some people, but the rest of the residency, we're pretty much just going to let you build and basically do it in your own pace and set up your own experience. And we're going to get out of your way as much as possible, while you're still going to have access to office hours and our expertise as well every now and then. So hope that answers the question. Next, we have Ming also raise his hand. Please shoot your question.
Hi. Yeah, so thank you for answering the first question there, both of you. I had a follow-up regarding the co-founding teams. When it comes to the domain expertise and the technical expertise, how did you find the divide in terms of who did what? Like, did you find it was a blur line where you had to do both at certain times? Was it quite strict? And yeah, how did you find that process?
I think it's actually up to the teams. I have seen some teams where there's actually a strict divide of responsibility, where the tech co-founder builds and the domain expert validates. But just whether or not you divide it strictly, just remember that as long as you're able to defer to their expertise on some issues, and they're willing to defer to yours on some issues, and then you can come together to talk about strategy and do a weekly retrospect on what worked and what didn't, it would be better. So when Antler says non-overlapping, complementary, they just literally mean that you two can't be doing the same things. And you should have your own zone of responsibilities as well. But every now and then, how are you willing to help the other person do their task better is also another test of how you can work together as a team. And I would say that's the most important task as well. Test as well.
Thank you.
Anything you want to add there, Syed?
Yeah, I think I agree to Shweta. It's up to the teams to decide that. Like for us, in our particular case, I was the domain expert. I had management or sales experience, but I couldn't code. And also I didn't have any previous experience in managing tech teams as well. So that's where it was really important for us to bridge that gap. And that's where Antler said to bring a co-founder who has expertise in that. And that's good for our business as well. I think it's up to you as a co-founders or team.
Got it. All right, understood. A very quick follow-up to Syed there, if possible. So you said your first co-founder, there was too many similar skill sets a couple of weeks in. Was that apparent at the start initially, or were these problems that came up along the way? And why did you pick him at the start? Sorry.
Yeah, because I and him have been building together since 2018, and we studied together as well. I thought I'll be able to bring in the business, raise funds, and sign up clients, whereas he'll be managing tech teams. We didn't know, but in the 5th week, actually, when we had to test some hypotheses, test some messaging online, we couldn't do it within the team. I didn't have that expertise, and then him as well. And that's where I also realized, and then Antler spotted that gap as well and suggested to get another co-founder. They didn't say that you let that co-founder go, obviously, but they said you need to bridge this gap, and it's up to your choice how you're gonna answer that. And for us, I thought my other co-founder went back to the previous business we were doing together, and then I brought in a new co-founder who can bridge that gap effectively.
Yeah,
Got it.
just to
Understood.
quickly add to that, like Syed said, if one of the important things that you're looking for in your co-founder is to build the product, just make sure that this person can really build and don't outsource that bit. Because when you're working with a limited capital initially, and you're trying to get your MVP and validate the market and get to the next stage of your business building, every penny, I mean, how you plan on spending every bit of your investment is super important. So as much as you can make sure that there's no skill shortage within the team, at least to get to the initial first year, you just be placed so much better than teams that are outsourcing tech or outsourcing XYZ. So just make sure that you can do everything just between the two of you.
That's a really good point. Thank you so much, Ming. I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Imtiaz, who is actually Syed's co-founder. Imtiaz, what questions are you looking
Hey
at?
guys, really great insights. My question to you both, because you both are founders and CEOs. So what's the toughest part of your job on everyday basis?
Yeah, that's a really good one, Imtiaz.
The tough one.
It is.
He's been waiting to ask you these questions.
Yeah, I think it's navigating through day-to-day challenges, and as a CEO, you need to be stay motivated. So your team is relying on yourself. That's the hardest part, where a challenge is coming your way and you're taking it all in and not letting it pass to the team, because they are actually building. And the other is, I think, firing. I've done a couple of them. That's the hardest part as a CEO, because it's really hard to fire someone, but it's not about them. It's just about the proposition we are trying to solve. We need to have someone who can better solve it for the users. So I think firing is another one for me as a CEO to date.
Wow, I don't think I have much to add. I've not really gotten to the point where I can fire people. It's just me and my co-founder. But really the hardest part would be like you genuinely wearing multiple hats in the same day. And it's so important to make sure that your mental capital is not exhausted. Because the one thing that you really need to preserve as you're doing these initial investor meetings, client meetings, customer meetings, discovery calls, is that you present yourself in the best possible way. So the conversation would really bounce off of your energy level. So even if you're feeling doubtful about yourself or about the company, if you're having a bad day, if you've had a bad customer call, it's so important. But at this time, I mean, as somebody that's just so married and so invested in this project, it's so important to quickly bounce back and then get to the next call and say, hi, so, it's great to chat. Thank you. And then do a investor call and just like wear these multiple hats. And I would say, yeah, just making sure that just checking in with yourself every now and then is just so important as you're doing this.
Yeah. #founder.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Imtiaz, for that question. We have Freya with
Hello, guys.
hand raised. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello. So just a couple questions. So I'm curious, after the investment, maybe some people get co-founders, some people don't. Some people do get the co-founders, and then what happened to the people who don't get the co-founders in the end, and what happened to the people who get investments and have co-founders?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I can help answer this. So Antler have a very strong thesis investing in co-founding team. It doesn't mean that we don't really invest in solo founder. We invest in some solo founders, but it's more like an exception rather than a norm. So it's really about whether the solo founder can actually have sort of the ability to bring on board like a strong team around them, or they can actually sort of like basically cover a lot of this grounds that Sweta has mentioned, right? The co-founding team, the founding team actually needs to actually have the capacity to actually get to a point where you achieve product market fit, build your MVP without actually burning a lot of your money, a lot of your investment money. And a lot of the cases, it looks like having a full co-founding team and complementary skill sets. So I hope that answers the questions. Again, after investments is basically full on, right? It's basically building your company. We expect you to build, to scale. We expect you to also ideally raise your next sort of funding round within 12 to 18 months, because then that will allow you sort of like a scalable growth from what a VC money sort of like should actually afford you. So hope that answered the question, Freya. Just in the interest of time, I'm gonna actually try to wrap this up. Maybe we can have a quick answer from both of you, Syed and Sweta, just to wrap it up. So for those currently in the audience thinking to take that plunge, what would you say to them to actually change their mind? What would you say to them? Anything that you would want yourself a year ago to know before you start this journey with Antler?
Yeah. I would say reflecting on our journey of joining a program like Antler from the start of your entrepreneur journey would have significantly accelerated our pace. So Antler provides more than just funding. It offers ongoing mentorship and invaluable advice that truly makes a difference in shaping and advancing a startup like us. So having someone on your side from the start, I think is a really good decision you can make as an entrepreneur.
I would say just go with your gut. Trust your gut. Take the leap. You got this.
Love that. Trust your gut. You got this. And the first step to do that is actually to submit an application. So this is a plug. We are officially 4 weeks away from our upcoming residency in August. So for those of you thinking to take that plunge, please do so. Submit your application. I've just shared a link there in the chat box. But otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in tonight in this AMA session. Hopefully you have most of your burning questions answered. Please feel free to connect with me, with Mina, with Sarah on LinkedIn if you have any follow-up questions. Syed and Sweta as well are available on LinkedIn for you to connect. Hopefully to also ask some more questions that have not yet answered in this session. But otherwise, we hope you have a lovely evening ahead of you and stay warm, and hopefully we see some of you in the interview process and in the Antler residency coming up in August. All right, thank you everyone for joining, and good night.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thanks so much, Rani.
Thank you again, Sweta. Thank you, Syed. Bye, everyone.